Welcome to the Awesemo Early Bird Podcast. It's your old pal Emac coming to you with one Dave Lochran. You know him best as Laffy D. Laffy, another Sunday together. How the hell are you?
We're about to find out. We're recording this one a little bit early, which is fine because most games are over by now on Sunday, on Mother's Day. So we got the Sixers game. We've got Game of Thrones. And just had one of the most exhilarating and thrilling Game 7s that I've seen in a long time. Portland pulling that one out made me very happy. I was pulling for Portland real hard, especially after Nurkic went down. I get it. Golden State, still the much better team, but I'm very excited for it, and I'm glad they pulled this off.
Yeah, it should be an exciting finals. We'll see who's coming out of the East, but things looking good for the winner of tonight's game, and then Milwaukee, because they're down to just the conference finals here. So it should be a good one. I'm looking forward. It feels, while Game 7s are exciting, we've seen this matchup a bunch of times, so I'm ready for a new one.
Yep.
But let's dive in here. We got 6 games. There's a game at 6:30. It is Baltimore at New York. The games the sites have already listed their main slates, and it is not on it. 6:35 start again, but you can play that in the single game slates. But that's David Hess and Jonathan Luisiaga.
Luisiaga.
Well, good God, I would have never gotten there. But anyway, so it's the two of them. But we'll start off here with the 7:05 game. We've got 3 games in the 7 o'clock hour, 1 in the 8 o'clock hour, 1 at 9:40, and 1 at 10 o'clock. So things are relatively spread out.
Oh, no, it's Luisiga, right? It's IGA, isn't it? Luisiga. Yes, Jonathan Luisiga.
Yeah. But we've got the Brewers in Philadelphia starting things off. Now, I believe it will be Freddy Peralta coming in as the probable long reliever. I do not know who the opener is going to be yet. Looking at a couple sites here, and they do not – let's look at Major League Baseball. They do not have that yet. It's the only pitcher not listed. But we have Aaron Nola going for your Philadelphia Phillies. Not the easiest of matchups here, going against Milwaukee that has a very solid offense, some good righties, some good lefties here. But Nola is among the elites. How are you feeling about Nola since you have probably seen the majority of his career starts?
Yeah, I think Nola's been a very interesting case study this year. And we're about to see what he can do against the talented Milwaukee team. Now, look, Nola's last few starts have been better for sure. 7 Ks against St. Louis, tough matchup, got it done. It's interesting, too, the broadcasting crew for the Phillies mentioned that Aaron Nola has actually pitched a lot better in warm weather. Some pitchers, it doesn't bother them. We always talk about how cold weather is bad for hitters, but it is colder weather can be tough for pitchers to get a feel for the ball for the pitches as well. So that'll be well worth paying attention to. Now, keep in mind, it rained every second of the day today, and rain is supposed to continue throughout tomorrow. And throughout tomorrow night. So there's a very good chance that this game doesn't play at all. But here's how I see it. The Milwaukee Brewers are a very talented team. Citizens Bank Park is good for home runs. But the Brewers are also a team that are going to punch out at a relatively high clip against right-handed pitching. So there is quite a bit of upside here as far as Aaron Nola is concerned. And I think that's the one thing we have to pay attention to. The Milwaukee Brewers on the season this year are they're WOBA, ISO, all of that has been great, particularly at Miller Park. But they're also striking out at the second highest clip now on the season, the second highest rate. Their active roster is also second highest, 26.4%. So while they've been good, they also have some holes and they also have some flaws. I do think this could be a very high upside game for Nola, but also not the highest ceiling game for him. I think 9,200s, though, on DraftKings is really hard to ignore.
Yeah, and that's the key thing there. He's got an elite ground ball rate since the beginning of last season, right around 50%. Low fly ball rate, right around 30%. Of course, he's striking out 26% of the batters in that time frame. That is going across a very robust 1,015. So good numbers here for Nola. Looking at the weather.com, hour by hour, it looks like it goes down to about a 10% chance of rain for 7, 8, and 9 o'clock hours. But we know sometimes storms move a little more slowly than we expect. So it could be a little bit touch and go, and then it looks like there's some more stuff coming in around 10 or 11 o'clock. So there could be a window there. We'll have to check much closer to first pitch here to see what's going on. Assuming it is going to be Freddy Peralta there and the game does go, is anybody interesting you on the Phillies side of thing here? I would have to say for me, it's going to be Bryce Harper and Rhys Hoskins, but that's my default position every time we talk about the Philadelphia Phillies.
Yeah, I mean, Hoskins has just been spectacular. Freddy Peralta's that last outing was pretty impressive, and I think he's the type of guy that out of the bullpen has made more sense from the beginning because he only throws 2 pitches and he leans really heavily on that 4-seam fastball. 5 scoreless innings, 5 Ks. 4 or 5 innings seems ideal for Peralta, but at the same time, he's definitely not immune to coughing up some power. 7 home runs already in 26 innings pitched. That's not ideal. Citizens Bank Park also isn't going to work in his favor. And he's giving up homers to lefties and righties. So while he does get strikeouts, he's also going to cough up a good amount of power, and he doesn't get many ground balls. So I don't love the one-offs here. I think the stack makes the most sense. The only part that sucks is that, you're going to have an opener who is good and who is probably going to go 1, 2, 3 in the first inning, which, makes stacking a team a little bit less appealing when their top 3 or 4 in the lineup are, likely going to not have good matchups whatsoever.
All right, let's see here. Heading on to our next game, we have.
Well, I think, by the way, Yelich and just some lefties for here. Look, Nola once in a while will cough up some power. Like we've seen it this season, and at home, he is sometimes going to struggle. So while I like him because of his price, you're also talking about a guy that has allowed basically a home run per start this year and north of a home run per 9. So just the overall talent and power on this Milwaukee team makes them a quality, just low-owned tournament stack. But hitters from both sides aren't really cash game viable, and I don't really love the one-offs here unless you're looking at like a Yelich, but he's also always going to be one of, if not the most expensive players on the slate.
All right, moving along here to our next game, we have Houston, who put up a robust 15 runs on Sunday against Texas. They had 11 on Saturday, so this has been quite the weekend for Houston. Should be no surprise they are pretty good. They're going to be on the road up in Detroit, facing a tough pitcher for once here. It's Matt Boyd, who I do have some interest in as a lefty. He's 8,800 on DraftKings. That's a very favorable price point for his skill set. Tough matchup, but as we've seen, the pricing is rather concentrated here for pitching these days on DraftKings, which makes for some very interesting decision points. You also see that over on Yahoo. Shout out to Yahoo. They are one of the presenting sponsors of the Early Bird podcast. If you have not yet signed up, go to the Spotlight Hitters and Stacks page or article. It's free. We run it every day. Second paragraph, we'll have the link on getting to Yahoo and getting your first deposit bonus reward, which will be in the form of Yahoo Sports Reward points, which they will match up to your first $30 deposit. And those are as good as cash and available for immediate use to be entered in any contest. Laffy, we have Brad Peacock here. I'm normally not, I don't get too wild and crazy and excited for Mr. Brad here. However, Detroit, not that great of an offense. They're doing a little bit better now that Christian Stewart is back, but Miguel Cabrera, an absolute shadow of his former self. Currently, he has a 100 WOBA dating back to 100 ISO dating back to the beginning of last year. He is on pace for 5 home runs and 70 RBI this season. I remember when he was a Triple Crown winner. You've got Heimer Candelario that's looking like last year was probably his high water mark. Grayson Greiner, who has allowed 16 stolen bases in his last or in his 25 starts or 25 games behind the plate. What do you want to do here with let's focus on Detroit first. Yes to Matt Boyd, I think. No to their offense.
Yeah, well, I mean, I probably no to Matt Boyd. I really think Matt Boyd is a quality pitcher, but you're going to be hard pressed to get to him on this slate against Houston when you have, a lot of other good pitchers we'll talk about momentarily, or at least a decent amount of them, maybe not a ton. But I think, Aaron Nola in that same range. you have Shane Bieber, basically the same price in a much more appealing matchup. And then, look, Brad Peacock is one of those guys that is very dependent on matchups. And last week, I was not huge on him against Kansas City. And then Adam had pointed out during the deeper dive, the Kansas City lineup was a whole lot more appealing for Peacock, who this season, when you look at his when you look at this guy's splits, you know, 345 WOBA to lefties, a 244 ISO, 1.89 home runs per nine. Not very good. Also, 48% fly ball rate and 48% hard hit rate. What about righties? Well, against righties, Brad Peacock has been a whole lot better. 30% K rate with a 215 WOBA, a .088 ISO, and no home runs. So when you're looking at this matchup, you want Brad Peacock to get as many righties as possible. And what you're going to likely see is a lot of righties in this lineup. My expectation is that you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, probably 7 righties, which, you know, while I think Boyd is a better overall pitcher, I'll take Peacock at a comparable price point in a much, much better matchup against a team, unlike Houston, that strikes out a lot.
All right, absolutely fair points, and we do love the context and of course matchup equals opportunity, and that is something that perhaps the Detroit Tigers will present here to Mr. Peacock. On the other side, we've got no Jose Altuve. He is on the injured list, but you still have Springer, Bregman, who had 2 home runs on Sunday, Carlos Correa. Those guys are all relatively solid against lefties. Any interest at all in Houston? We do have just 12 teams on this slate, but as we've mentioned, difficult matchup here against Matt Boyd.
It's very difficult it's difficult for both of them, right? Yeah. Matt Boyd is striking out a lot of batters, lefties and righties above 30% this year, which is pretty incredible. 5% walk rate against hitters from both sides of the plate. I mean, really all of the numbers are outstanding. And even home runs per 9, he's limited both lefties and righties incredibly well. He has a sub-1 whip against lefties and righties. Both of them, he's just been excellent. Now, I think your problem here isn't that Boyd can't limit runs, but how many times are you going to get them to swing and miss for a third strike? You know, how many strike? Houston is such a low K team that it makes life miserable. So from an implied total standpoint, what do we see? Well, the Astros, because they're the Astros, are probably, and I haven't seen it yet, I'm pulling it up now, probably still going to have a relatively high total, but
it is 4.3.
Okay, so wow, Matt Boyd getting a lot of respect here. Usually Houston gets the advantage. You said 4.3? Yeah,
4.3 for Houston, 3.8 for Detroit.
Lower than I thought. No, Boyd's been good enough to where, especially his ability to suppress power. I don't think you need to go to anyone for Houston.
All right, let's continue along here. Our next one is the 7:40 game. This is the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, who had a late start there on Sunday in Baltimore. They were waiting out the weather, so they're heading to Minnesota to take on the Twins. It will be Jose Berrios versus Tyler Skaggs. Berrios is an intriguing pitcher. Over his last 1,000 batters faced, essentially split equally to lefties and righties. He has a 4.0 xFIP, a 25% strikeout rate, striking out lefties at 26%, righties at 24%. So that's kind of a wash there. And giving up twin 155 isolated power numbers. And the WOBA might as well be tied as well. 295 to lefties, 285 to righties. Just pretty solid. He's a good pitcher. The Angels are improved with Shohei Ohtani back in the mix here. They don't strike out a ton. They are, in fact, the lowest. Their active roster has the lowest strikeout rate against both lefties and righties this year by about 2 percentage points in each category against the next best team. What do we want to do with Jose here? He is 9,400. Arguably one of the better pitching options that we have here, but it's another decision point. And we have a few other guys that we'll get to, in Bieber and Robbie Ray and et cetera, but nobody has like the pristine matchup, not like that Syndergaard versus Miami one that got washed away like tears in the rain.
Yeah, I feel like Berrios, one thing to point out is at home and on the road, he's been an entirely different pitcher for his career. 26% K rate at home, 20% on the road. This is for his career. 0.64 home runs per nine at home, elite. 1.73 on the road, well below elite, actually below average. Walk rate inflates by 3.5%. His whip goes from 108 to 1.4. His xFIP goes from 3.7 to 4.96. Like, way different pitcher at home. If this was on the road, I know it sounds crazy because it's like you'd like to know why he's been so much worse on the road. I can't give you the answer for that, but I can tell you we have enough starts now to know it's something. The problem is, and you mentioned it, this is just a team that does not strike out. They do not strike out, much like with Matt Boyd. I'll take the strikeout upside with Nola, and I'll take the strikeout upside with Shane Bieber. Those two guys basically and Brad Peacock. So those are three guys in the same price range, or at least within $1,000 of the price range, from 85 for Peacock to 94 for Berrios in that one tier. There are three guys that I think make more sense, and Boyd and Berrios are not in that equation.
All right. I wanted to call. I can't. Oh, there we go. It's because I'm on full season. All right. So I'll look that up in just a second here. On the other side, we have Tyler Skaggs. He is someone I am interested in going against. I do like the Twins, particularly Nelson Cruz. Jorge Polanco is solid. Now, these guys are not going to come cheap, but that means that their popularity should be somewhat suppressed. CJ Cron. Oh, wait, it's a revenge game, Lofty. But CJ Cron, Hey, he's going against a lefty. He has power. I do like to see the Cron Zone, as the Minnesota Twins multimedia likes to tweet out his highlights on their Twitter. But I don't want any part of Skaggs. I'm intrigued by Minnesota, but we are definitely paying full retail price here for these guys. What is your assessment of this portion of the matchup?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is what type of power numbers is Skaggs giving up, because look, he's not a bad pitcher, but he also doesn't have the strikeout upside that I was hoping he would have when he came into the league. 19% strikeout rate overall. And then against righties, you're talking about a K rate that sits at a decent 22%, but, not much above league average, a good amount of power, north of a home run per nine. I don't have any issue here with somebody like CJ Cron. It seems perfectly reasonable to me. I'd like to get him at a more favorable price point, but he's perfectly fine. This is a better park than Angel Stadium, although Angel Stadium has been better since they made those adjustments out in right field. But, yeah, I think with Skaggs, he's another guy who's decent but not great. And it's a tough matchup for Skaggs from a strikeout perspective too. So, yeah, I would be looking towards Minnesota bats here over Tyler Skaggs in this one.
All right. I was able to pull up the Angels numbers that I wanted to talk about. So against lefties, the Angels are striking out 13.8%. That's the lowest in the league. The next lowest team is the Marlins, all the way up at 16%, which is a low number in and of itself. Against righties, which of course is what Barrio says, we have them at 15%. The next best team is 18.2% with the Astros. That is just phenomenal that they are not striking out.
Yeah, it's crazy
at all.
Yeah, it's really low, and it was the same thing last year too.
Just flabbergasted there. All right, let's continue through with our foundational look here. On to our next game. This is the first one, or this is the lone 8 o'clock game. It's Shane Bieber going against Reynaldo López. Reynaldo López has been horrible, Laffy. Horrible. Over a 6 ERA, just has been allowing home runs, is the walk issues. He's looking lost.
He struck out like 100 batters a couple starts ago, though.
Yeah, but he's got a 6.8 price point. So that's where it gets a little bit intriguing. Cleveland is coming from Oakland to Chicago, where they spent their weekend series out there against the Athletics. I'm still going to side somewhat here with the Cleveland hitters. I just cannot, in good faith, go to Reynaldo López. Lucas Giolito did look good. Now, of course, entirely different pitcher. But so we do know that occasionally these White Sox pitchers are not all bad. But
Giolito is pretty good. I've been buying into him, and I still do. I like Giolito, actually.
Yes, and he's no Dylan Covey at least, so he has
No,
that.
he's not, and that's a compliment.
Yes, as backhanded as you could get. That's a Chuck Norris roundhouse compliment. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, but so it's gonna be no dog, no for me. A little pitchy there with Reynaldo Lopez, but we do have Shane Bieber, who is somewhat intriguing here. We'll have to see what the lineup is. We got a couple guys carrying the questionable tag here for Chicago, but that is a place I am considering going. What do you want to do here with the Biebs? He is at $9,000, but he has been a reasonably good pitcher, and I still say if he didn't have the last name Bieber, I would probably be approaching him somewhat differently, but I can't really take it seriously because
I don't care. I don't care what his name is, man. Yeah. This is a pretty good spot. You know, he's definitely been better against righties than he has against lefties. I think it's worth considering. You know, he has a 32% K rate, 4% walk rate against righties, and then 19% K rate, 11% walk rate against lefties. That's definitely not great, but it's also a White Sox team that is hardly the most formidable squad in baseball, you know, and I don't think, you know, while they will run out a decent amount of lefties, like Moncada's the one guy that's a bit concerning, but they all just strike out so much that it kind of doesn't matter. Like, I still think Bieber has a distinct advantage here, and that's really what I'm paying attention to. So you're going to get monster K rate or strikeout numbers. Let's just pull up what they're doing against right-handers this season. Because last season, obviously, this is a White Sox team that had a high K rate. So we'll check their active roster. Against righties this season, the White Sox are striking out at a top 7 clip, right under 25%. And I would only expect that number to climb. So, yeah, they've got a bit they're hitting decently, but they're just one of those teams where the upside, I'll put it very simply. We don't even have to go much further than this. The upside against the White Sox for Bieber is just higher than Boyd against Houston or even Berrios against the Angels. I mean, anything can happen. Maybe Berrios can get 8 looking strikeouts or whatever, but you're just not going to have these games. And now that Ohtani's back, it makes it much more difficult. I just like the ceiling so much more with Shane Bieber, and he's not really overpriced.
Yeah, that's definitely a good call out there. That the price tag at $9K with his numbers, particularly against righties, it's well founded. It's well founded. Looking at the hitters here, we like the switch hitters, of course, for Cleveland. That would be Lindor, Jose Ramirez, and Carlos Santana. Kipnis is absolutely fine. He's $3,600, reasonably priced there. We may need a little bit of salary savings, but that could help out. That's about all I got from this game. Anything else before we hit our last two here?
Reynaldo Lopez is bad. 444 WOBA, 225 ISO against lefties this year. I mean, just dreadful. He's given up 2 home runs per 9 to lefties, 1.85 home runs per 9 to righties. It really doesn't matter who's facing him. Obviously, you prefer the Lindors and the Ramirez and them. And another thing, too, to consider is these guys also have some speed. And Reynaldo Lopez also, it will depend on who's behind the plate, but he's not great at holding runners either. So that just gives more of an incentive here. So far through the games that we've worked our way through, my favorite hitting team, or my favorite bats for this slate right now is definitely this Cleveland Indians squad.
All right, moving along to our next game here. We have Nick Kingham making another start here for the Pirates. He's carrying just shy of a 6 ERA in the bigs this year. He is not fully stretched out, but should approach qualifying for a win. He's going to be going here in Arizona against the Diamondbacks, who will be countering with Robbie Ray. Robbie Ray, somewhat intriguing here. Arizona, of course, had their homestand this weekend. Pittsburgh was in St. Louis, so they will be traveling there to Phoenix on Sunday night. What do you want to do here with Robbie Ray at an even 10,000?
Again, a pretty low strikeout team in the Pittsburgh Pirates. I just don't think you need to get very cute here. It doesn't seem necessary to get cute when it comes to matchups. Now, The difference is the Pirates against lefties, the sample is small, but the Pirates do strike out quite a bit more against lefties. So, take that for what it's worth. I don't think it's a huge deal, but they are a higher K team against lefties than righties. That stands out to me as something that is reasonable. So if I'm going to talk about the Nola, Bieber, Peacock, and all that, I would put Robbie Ray in that conversation, but below them. Still playable, but below them. And the only reason is because he's the only 10K pitcher on DraftKings. So if we're going to be paying that much for him, I'd like him to be worth that much. And given the other lesser expensive pitchers, I'd go with them first.
All right. The Chase Field roof will be open. It will also be open on Tuesday. It'll be closed on Wednesday. They have a early game there. Finishing out the Pirates series on a bit of a getaway day. Pirates, as you mentioned, top 5 team, striking out against lefties. They are also one of the worst teams for power, which was rather surprising. They're about equal to the Marlins against lefties. So food for thought. There'll be a 2-game late slate, so that's something to consider there. With regards to going against Kingham here, for me, it's going to be David Peralta, but this is just not as exciting of a lineup here for Arizona without A.J. Pollock, without Paul Goldschmidt, but they are getting a 4.8 implied run total here, Laffy. I think that's partly due to the fact that this will be Kingham and then the bullpen for this one. What stands out to you for any of the hitters for Arizona?
I mean, yeah, they don't have those guys, but Christian Walker is top 5 in doubles this season. So is David Peralta. They got a few guys they're hitting well. The problem is that they're egregiously priced. So if you're paying up for these guys, you're going to have to forego some of these Cleveland bats and some other really decent spots. So they're fine, but when you're looking at price points where like all of them are in the 5K range, I mean, Gerard Dyson is above 5K. I'm probably going to look away. It's too much. I don't see myself being able to get there.
All right. Let's see here. Would you, as we get on to our final game, it's Oakland at Seattle. Did you know that Seattle has scored the most runs thus far in the major leagues?
I did, and they've been very impressive.
Do you know that they've also allowed the most runs?
I did not know that.
They've got the rare double-double.
Pretty impressive.
They're going in with a negative 9 run differential right now, despite leading the league in scoring. So
crazy.
Just putting that out there. But we do have Oakland here. You've got Mike Fiers coming off a no-hitter, Laffy. There have been 300 no-hitters in the league, and 2 of them are his. That's just pretty wild. But he threw 130 pitches. The only time he ever threw more is when he threw 134 pitches when he threw a no-hitter against the Los Angeles Dodgers back in August of 2015. He did get an extra day off, but I don't want any part of Fiers. Seattle, though, they are coming all the way across the country. They've been in Boston this weekend, so they got a long flight home before their game. But if I'm going with anybody, I want to look to Haniger, Vogelbach, Encarnacion. There's a chance J.P. Crawford, he could be batting second again if D. Gordon is still on the shelf. If Gordon's back, Crawford will probably still play shortstop, but he'll drop down to 7th or 8th. The intriguing thing about Crawford is he's 3,300 on DraftKings, which is very helpful from a pricing perspective here. For me, it's going to be all about the Mariners. What do you want to do with the Mariners or Oakland as we wrap things up?
Yeah, Mike Fiers with the no-hitter. Good for him, I guess, but that doesn't mean that I have much interest in going back to a guy like Fiers. Really don't, actually. He threw a no-hitter with a 7% swinging strike rate, so forgive me if I were to say I'm not convinced. So I'm perfectly fine looking towards Seattle bats here. And again, a lot of it comes down to price. Many of their salaries have come down, which makes them a whole lot more appealing. And with that being the case, Seattle's one of the teams that I'm very much willing to target. Kikuchi's looked a lot better lately. He seems to be acclimating to life and Major League Baseball. But I'm also not, totally sold that you can't pick on him either. I think that, there's still a little bit of a ways to go here. And he has an 8.8% swinging strike rate, a called strike plus swinging strike rate of 27%, which is not great. It's pretty much league average. So when it comes to missing bats, he's not doing a great job. He's getting an above average amount of ground balls, but there are some aspects of Kikuchi's game that I think can be targeted. And the reason I say this to close it out is you look at this Oakland team. They have a lot of right-handed bats that have plenty of power, and I think are well underpriced. You're talking Chris Davis is $4K. Okay, that's insane. Who else is it? Who is I? Piscotty, 36. Chapman, 44. Right. Even Marcus Semien leads off 3,900. These guys are just discounted beyond belief. So while Kikuchi's good, you're getting to stack them compared to stacking the Diamondbacks. You could stack them and easily get two of the higher end pitchers. You do that with the Diamondbacks, you got to go to a Reynaldo López or something, and I'm just not really willing to do that.
Yep. That'll wrap it up for us here. We've got interesting slates, some interesting pricing. Yahoo does not have their pricing out yet as we're recording this. Probably a little bit of a delay. Mother's Day, I noticed any sort of holidays tend to gum up the works here, but don't forget to call your moms if you haven't. And if you're listening to this on Monday morning, oops is all we've got to say. But with that, you can follow Laffy at Laffy_D on Twitter. I am at EMACDFS. It is Osmo_COM. With that, gamers, good luck.